is gonna be, we are gonna have a panel that will be moderated by Professor Roberto Verdone from University of Bologna. And the panel focus will be on trying to answer the question, will 6G become the fundamental and sustainable infrastructure for verticals? And we will have several speakers, several experts animating the debate. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Monique. Good morning, everyone. I'm sharing my screen because I have a few slides to introduce the panel. I guess you are seeing my slides. So first of all, a few words about me. I'm professor of telecommunications at the University of Bologna in Italy, and I'm director of the CNIT Italian Laboratory of Wireless Communication, WILAB. We have a number of panelists here, though there is a last-minute change that I will mention in a while. So let me first introduce one by one the panelists very shortly because of the for the sake of time, and then I will make some general questions to open the panel, leaving them to the panelists to answer and to provide their insights. So let me start with Hans Schotten, who already had a very interesting speech this morning. Professor Hans Schotten is full professor at the University of Kaiserslautern. He is also scientific director of the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, the FKI. He is also coordinator of the, as we heard this morning, of the umbrella project of the 6G German program, which was launched 1 year ago. Actually, I will go through the list of panelists with the same order that I proposed for them to start. So after this introduction, I will give the floor to Hans first. The second panelist will be Ying. She's Deputy Director of Mobile Communication Innovation Center at China Academy of Information and Communication Technology. She's Vice Leader of Standards and the International Cooperation Working Group of IMT 2030 Promotion Group. Then we'll move to the next panelist, which is not going to be Merwan Deba, which unfortunately could not make it, last minute change. And so I'm very thankful to David Bosvartik from HETC, who gave a speech few tens of minutes ago. As we heard, he's HETC Director of New Technologies and involved in a number of activities dealing with academia and industry in the field of ICT and 6G. So he will replace Merwan Deba, and he will be the third panelist. Then Ricardo Gonzalez is Director of the Core Network Group at Docomo Eurolabs in Munich. Ricardo works in 3GPP 5G Core Network since release 15. Moreover, he is board member of the 5G ACIA and very active within 16G. Then the fifth panelist will be Professor Dirk Wilhelm. The last two panelists will address more specifically a couple of verticals. In fact, Professor Dirk Wilhelm is with the Technical University of Munich, Faculty of Medicine, Department of Surgery. His scientific focus is with colorectal surgery, robotic surgery, artificial intelligence, biomedical engineering. So we will be talking about the hospital environment. And then finally, Professor Maziar Nekovee, he is Dean of the AI Institute and Managing Director of 6G Lab at the University of Sussex, UK. He currently co-leads an academia industry consortium with a focus on reducing CO2 emissions. So we will be talking about smart grid and sustainability of 6G networks. So thank you very much to the panelists for their availability to be part of this panel. And these are the questions that I'm proposing as general questions for all of them. So I expect that through their short speeches, they will somehow address some of them. Why do we need 6G after 5G, and for what verticals in particular? What key new features should 6G offer so that it will be more supportive than 5G for vertical businesses? And in order to have a sustainable infrastructure in 6G, what are the essential aspects to consider in 6G research? What role for AI in 6G? Okay, I'm now going to launch the first panelist speech by Professor Hans Schotten. Every panelist has 5 minutes for his speech, and after 5 minutes, a bell will ring, but then there will be more time for further discussions later. So, Hans, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Roberto, thank you very much, and welcome again to everybody. Yeah, we had these 4 questions. So, what are the verticals waiting for 6G and not being happy with 5G? I do not yet know. So we have a few ideas that, of course, might help, which is these sensing capabilities and localization and networks that will certainly make some things possible that we cannot cover with 5G. More important from my point of view is the question, will 6G become infrastructure? And from my point of view, that is less dependent on new functionalities, at least on the short term, and more dependent on 4 key requirements that you get from vertical industry. So make things cheaper, make things more easy to use, make things secure, and make them sustainable. And when you get this done, we are already happy. That's the feedback that you often get. And I guess that's what we have to meet first. So just adding complexity and not working on these 4 other dimensions will probably not help to convince to make 6G really the digital infrastructure of all verticals, which is certainly part of our vision. And from my point of view, we are today still missing efforts in this direction. In particular, of course, making things cheaper is not very sexy for researchers. Adding functionality is much more sexy, but there is a certain risk that we do not meet the market expectations. So I would propose to more focus on these 4 questions, while research communities will anyway address the other questions. Sustainability. The big issue with sustainability, why we haven't moved forward a lot, is that it's an extremely complex question. So we have direct and indirect effects. We have energy, CAPEX and OPEX. And for the time being, there is no clear model. On the other hand, we need to spend efforts to address this, because there is a significant, maybe not high, but a significant probability that we will see a regulation on the energy balance of digital infrastructure, and a reasonable, well-justified methodology behind this is, from my point of view, not yet available, and we have to work early in order to avoid that goes in the wrong direction. And the last question that Roberto listed is AI. Yeah, I guess very obviously we are calling 6G the first AI native generation. I think the key topic was already addressed today. So when implementing AI, we have a number of regulatory and verification problems. Not only the European AI regulation is a problem, so we have to guarantee that when using AI, we are discrimination-free, etc. We also, of course, need to have minimum conformance tests, minimum performance conformance tests that need to be specified. And how to do this when we are extensively using AI is, from my point of view, also one of the really hard questions, where the 6G research community has still quite some work to do, because I have not yet seen many good answers to this question, in particular if we don't want to block the capabilities of 6G. Okay, thank you very much. That would be my first try to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, including for the ability to stay within the time assigned to you. So let's move now to the second panelist, Ying. It's your turn now. So maybe there is a problem. So in order not to waste any time, I would move to the third panelist, and then I'll check later whether she can join us. So the third panelist is David Bosvartik from Etsy, who is replacing one of the panelists who had a last-minute problem. David, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me? Can you see my face?
Yes, both. So please,
Fantastic.
the floor is yours.
Yeah. So coming into the panel at the last minute, but no problem. So in short, 6G will be very complex. We're introducing new technologies. We're probably going to have different network architectures. We're going to have certain levels of autonomy and AI, ML controlled network elements. So it's going to be very complex. So it's very important to be clear about what we want to achieve in the beginning. Add to this, so in addition to complexity, which needs AI to manage it, you then need to add in the sustainability aspect. So we will be asking of the network to do more and more, or less and less, faster, lower latency, greater coverage. And in addition, they will be asking for energy efficiency. So how to do more with less. So we need to have a network which will be able to perform and consume less electricity, produce less waste, emit less CO2. So it's a very big challenge. Then what will be defined as the sixth generation of networks or mobile networks. Obviously, you're going to have the evolution of 5G to 6G, but then at the same time, you have everything relating to fiber optics, optical communications, you have Wi-Fi evolution, you have integration of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks, which we heard earlier on in the presentation. So this again adds in complexity, but also what makes up the sixth generation of connectivity, if we don't just say 6G mobile networks. So again, it will be the concept of networks of networks. We've kind of got to the situation in 5G where 5G is already considered as critical infrastructure. Turn off a 4G and a 5G network and see how long it takes society to turn to chaos. It's estimated in a few hours. So as we move to 6G, we'll be connecting even more industry. So this is where the question about verticals comes into play. So if we have connectivity to critical industries, the connectivity itself becomes critical infrastructure. So maintaining the quality, the 5 nines, the 6 nines of quality of connectivity, ensuring resilience, ensuring resistance against attack, it becomes even more critical for a critical infrastructure. And then if we move forward to 2030, when we expect to see the first 6G networks emerging, we're going to be, well, let's say we're 10 years from now, or 8 years from now, we're going to be in a different situation of regulation, spectrum management, even standardization. We can assume that such complex networks integrating AI will need to be standardized, possibly in a different way. So how will we provide regulation to the future networks? How will we allocate and sell budget to the future networks? And this was covered by Ofcom and others earlier on. And also, how will we enable the standards for 6G? Will it be done in this traditional waterfall model? We'll be looking at the more agile model. We have the introduction of such things as ORAN. So when we talk about standards fragmentation, it's not only the geopolitics, but it's the evolution of standardization to be able to serve the sixth generation of connectivity networks. So I absolutely didn't answer your question, but I think they're relative topics which sort of embellish the question as well, that 6G will certainly happen. The question now we can start asking is, will we need a 7G? And hopefully we'll get to the stage where we say no. And we can assume that 6G will be serving more and more industries. So yes, 6G will be an underpinning technology for many vertical industries, maybe not all, and maybe not only. It won't only be 6G connecting these networks. We'll have evolved Wi-Fi, pure fiber optic connectivity, satellite networks. So all of this needs to be considered as an ensemble. So there you go, just over 5 minutes of answer. Hope that was useful. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. So let me now move to the fourth panelist, Ricardo Gonzalez. Is from a research center, and so basically I would also expect to have the view from the research viewpoint on aspects like what are the key new features that we expect from 6G. Ricardo, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. So if I can, I will use one support slide to support my statement so that you can also avoid to see my face in front. So let's say that I try to respond to the three questions, three of the four questions. About what verticals are for 6G, of course, those that already issued the requirement for 5G are the one at the forefront. So automotive for road safety, autonomous driving, automation industry for factory and process automation, especially high reliability is important and it must be improved possibly in the next generation. And further integration of time-sensitive networking requirements. And finally, multimedia production for immersive communication is, of course, the one most interesting for this kind of applications. So now the point is, why do we need 6G and what 5G is not good for? So basically, 5G is definitely very well-shaped technology. It's addressing multiple requirements from different verticals. There is something that can be done as innovation, and that would require a next generation network, not only for the radio technology, but also for the core network point of view. And I'm thinking especially to enable new usage scenarios like immersive communication, compute AI services, and integrated sensing and communication. That may require to introduce new control plane features like distributed NAS or enabling service-based interaction between the RAN functionalities and the core network. And also another thing is to exploit better the programmability of the network resources to enable shortest path communication, reuse functionalities that are offered by the transport network currently, and they are not fully exploited by the 3GP core network. And also functionalities and capabilities offered by cloud and data centers. And second point, why we need a new architecture for the 6G is to ensure sustainability, not only for the environment point of view, but also for the economic viability point of view. And that brings me to the last point that I would try to touch. So let's say that there are these sustainability targets that are, of course, very important and must be considered as a design principle in the architecture of the next generation. But sustainability in terms of environment is not the only thing, it's also the economic viability of the new services that is at stake. So let's say that it's not a wish, but it's a must that the next generation network will be economically viable and sustainable. And I'm thinking to the approach that the document is following, for instance, is the realization of the cloud continuum. So the possibility of hosting different virtualized network functions, core and access into one platform that can host also application components. And that can be done in a sort of, let's say, under quotation mark, general purpose hardware. And finally, also talking of AI-based services, the coherent design between network devices and application services is very important to enable energy efficiency in compute and communication resources coordinated allocation. And that's very important because the new services that are expected for 6G, like immersive communication, are very energy consuming. So how to save energy and realize it in a sustainable manner and the economically viable manner, those new services is very important. So this is all from my side. I hope I stayed in the time that was assigned to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ricardo. So before we move to the last two panelists who will address specific verticals, as we said, I would like to go back and check whether Ying can actually join us. It seems she still has connectivity problems, so she needs 6G. Okay, so let's move to the last block. So the next panelist will be Professor Dirk Wilhelm.
Yeah, hello. Hello
Hi,
from my
Dirk.
side. Hi, Roberto.
Hi.
As I already mentioned, I'm a surgeon, a physician by profession, so not a specialist in networking and related to 5G and 6G technologies. Nevertheless, we have many research projects in the field of robotics and collaborative robotics, and you might know that in the healthcare system, we're currently facing a huge shortage of personnel staff, and it's difficult to drive hospitals with the remaining personnel. And for this reason, in the healthcare system, I see great chances for verticals related to collaborative robotics, healthcare robotics, not specifically for surgery, but to assist the people, the healthcare workers within their daily work. And we have many projects in this regard. And what we experience is that the control of those devices requires a integrated network, a fusion of different sensor modalities, which we do not have currently by 5G or existing networks, but for which we need this kind of flexible and immersive networking, which is provided by 6G. Also, the ability to have a device-to-device communication directly without any surrounding network are further aspects which for which I see 6G related robotics as a vertical in the healthcare system. Nevertheless, it's not only robotics, it's any assistive technology which requires a sensing of the environment. You might know that in medicine, we have a highly dynamic environment, same as in automotive. And for this reason, any assistive technology will be a vertical for or within the healthcare system. So this is shortly as concerned for the verticals within the healthcare. And I see, as I mentioned, due to the sensor integration possibilities we have within 6G, the semantic routing given by 6G and the integration of multiple devices, the sensor fusion of devices, a huge chance which can be used and integrated in the developments we are currently performing and doing within the healthcare system. So only shortly, but maybe just to save time and have some more time for discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dirk. And then we move to Professor Maziar Nekovee. Maziar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Roberto. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning, Maziar. I know you have problems with sharing your slides, so I will share them for you. So give me 1 second, because I have them here. So, okay, you should see the screen with your slides, and as long as you want me to go to the next one, you just say next.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure to, in this very timely panel, to discuss sort of focusing on the subject of net zero for interconnected energy and communication systems. Next slide, please, Roberto. So as we all know, one of the great differentiators of 5G as compared to previous generation is really want to be the sort of a critical network infrastructure of a range of vertical industries. And this really starts in 5G, but really coming to full fruition, I believe, in 6G. Now, obviously, that offers an enormous opportunities and challenges. I would like to focus mainly on a particular opportunity here in terms of helping other verticals to achieve net zero. So if you move to the next slide, please. So this is really based on a study done by GSMA recently in terms of the impact of connectivity, 5G and IoT community. So obviously the communication sector, as we all know, we are very busy researching to be really at the forefront of taking urgent action to reduce our own emission. For example, in UK, BT has shown by switching off 3G, you can reduce 30% energy efficiency and also in the 5G era, really research is looking very much on terms of reducing energy. But perhaps the biggest contribution of our sector is helping other sectors towards net zero, to help vertical sectors to reduce their own emissions through a combination of course, connectivity and digitalization and AI, which leads to result to smart use of their resources and orchestration of these. So, for example, a research that was really concluded by GSMA and Carbon Trust showed that a combination of using 5G and IoT connectivity will enable carbon reduction in other sectors that are 10 times larger than what actually the communication sector is using, which is 0.5%, so about 4% CO2 emission. And these are in sectors such as smart cities, such as energy, such as transport. Now, the biggest CO2 emissions are obviously in the energy and the transport sector, and therefore this is an area I'm going to now further focus on. So next slide, please. So this is a recent sort of a project that is trying to connect the energy sector to the communication sectors, looking at the challenges in this case of UK 2050 for decarbonization. And what we see here is that energy, telecommunication, and mobility, transport are really becoming interdependent, and therefore 5G in particular and the future 6G offers a fantastic opportunity to integrate basically the joint effort to reduce carbon emission. This involves a number of universities in UK, but we also have UK Power Networks, and Octopus Energy is a provider of electric vehicle services, Samsung and Interdigital from telecom sector on board. Next slide, please. Now, this is a sort of a bird's eye view of the network architecture, really, of the interconnected telecom and energy sectors. So we have obviously the traditional energy providers, so fossil fuel, but also have increasing the renewable. And what is really interesting is the acceleration of the number of electric vehicles. So these are really energy consumers, but also storage that are mobile. So they are perfectly important. And the connectivity for all these systems to work together in order to sort of achieve sustainable operations of renewable energy sources, but as well to ensure resilience and productivity. And that will require a sort of a network infrastructure, which will be a mix of mobile technologies, fixed networks, all coming together. So this is really an area that we are working on to develop the kind of a optimal network architecture for these interconnected systems. And the next slide, please, Robert. Thank you very much. So this is really my final slide. Now, one area that is of particularly great importance is the electric vehicles. So the acceleration in the take of electric vehicles creates new opportunities and challenges. Electric vehicles also storing energy, so there are mobile storage of the energy. Now, we always talk about how electric vehicles will ultimately reduce the carbon emission, but this is only the case if the charging of the electric vehicles is matched exactly, in fact, by renewable resources, which are fluctuating in time and space. And therefore, to enable to make that sort of matching, we need really communication networks to underlie this sort of a dynamic matching. And furthermore, with V2G technology, which means that electric vehicles can also discharge energy to grid, they can be used as a resource in order to shave the peak demands in renewables when it's needed, perhaps for other vehicles. And 5G obviously going to play a very important role here, but also moving forward with 6G with capabilities such as simultaneous sensing and localization, would enable us to create this sort of a network of electric vehicles that are able to dynamically charge and discharge based on sort of market models, their energy, such that we are able to achieve this sort of a ultimate CO2 emission that is promised from electric vehicles. In fact, research again conducted in 2021 by energy consultants, Rethink Research, found that this sort of smart system could prevent an overbuild of capacity with worth of 60,000 terawatts of hours, in annual generation. So it's a very significant contribution that our connectivity solutions, starting from 5G, moving to 6G, can bring to the energy sector. So thank you very much, Roberto.
Okay, thank you, Maziar. Very good, thank you. After this first round, I must say this is the first panel that I'm attending or contributing to where the panelists spend less time than what is assigned to them. Maybe this is because of the nasty noise of this bell, which, however, I didn't have to use. Okay, so now I have some questions for you, though in the meanwhile, while I will start with my questions, I will also check whether on the chat there are questions from other people attending the panel. So don't be shy, use the chat for providing questions. I would like to start from Hans, a question which is very high level, actually. It's nothing to do with the technical aspect, but since you are somehow coordinating this big 6G, the 6G umbrella project within the 6G German program, I have one question which is related to the acceptance by citizens of our technologies, including 6G. In Italy, we still have problems with the citizens because not always they are ready to accept 5G because of the usual worries regarding the technology impact on their lives and so on and so forth. What should we do to avoid this problem when 6G will come? What can we do in order to increase the level of acceptance by citizens and so have better impact on their lives from the positive sense without the worries that they normally have? Hans, do you have any view regarding this?
Yeah, certainly. I think you are addressing a really important point. And I mentioned in my presentation today in the morning, this working group 1 in the platform that is called Science Communication. So talking to the public, explaining what we are doing. So number one, it's important to address the public in a very early phase. Yeah, so with 5G, with respect to the question acceptance in public, but also acceptance with vertical industries, we definitely did something wrong. So industry as well as public claimed that they were too late informed about what we are doing. So that's what we can do better by very early talking about what we are doing, what we are planning to do, that we are discussing new frequency bands, but that we have good reasons and justifications why, number one, it's needed, because there's a benefit for society by what we are doing. So we might, for example, significantly improve traffic safety. We might be able to help reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, so that's important that they understand we are not doing this just for fun, for having faster cat videos, but we are doing this really for society. So that's the first point. The second point is already talking to them itself is important. So we learned that many people said, we are just upset because you are spending a lot of public research money without telling us what you are doing. So that is something that we definitely try to do completely different by having videos that explain what we are doing, addressing the general public and not just experts. Yeah, so no abbreviations. So and all the specific things that we are typically doing that is typically shocking, of course, people. So that's important. We will also, in a very early phase, actually, we already started to talk to experts on electromagnetic exposition. So in order to understand the latest status of medical research and to communicate this, to include this in the communication, probably not doing this by ourselves, but by inviting experts for the examination of these effects. And I already learned that that is super helpful, because they have some very clear statement that might help to at least reduce some worries. And on the industry side, it's of course talking to the industry associations. Most of them currently say it's too early. We would be happy if you make 5G cheaper and more secure and more sustainable, and then we are already happy. We don't need to have more, but we know some when they would like to have more. And we already start to talk to industry association, and we will do this in many iterations in order to very smoothly make them familiar with what we might be able to do and include their requirements. So yeah, so it's a whole portfolio of things that we have in mind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me move to David. David, you mentioned the role of critical industries, and also you mentioned the role of the need for 6G to be resistant and resilient against attacks. Can you elaborate a little bit on this concept of the critical industries that you believe will be impacted by 6G and will benefit from 6G, and on the topic of which was not discussed that much since now in this panel regarding the potential threats from web attacks?
Yeah, well, we are already seeing in 5G that 5G is being used for other industries apart from business and consumer connectivity. In 3GPP, there's already a large number of market representative partners from other industries, so from the automotive, from the broadcasting, from the satellite, coming in and seeing how they can integrate their requirements into 5G and 5G advanced. As we move forward to 6G, let's say in 8 to 10 years time, the expectation is that 6G will succeed if it's deployed across multiple vertical industries or other industries. So then you can get the economies of scale and the interoperability of data shared between different industries. Once other industries start integrating a single network or a single network of networks, the critical nature of that network becomes clear. If we're serving the logistical freight business, if we're serving connected cars, if we're serving the health industry, and there's a breakdown in communication, or somebody comes in and steals information or interferes with the connectivity, obviously the critical nature has been non-validated. So it's very important with all communication technologies. We've always said, and I'm not sure we've always done, we need to think security first. Secure by design, trustworthy by design, privacy by design. I think if you want 6G to be a success and 6G to be accepted by the consumers and the industry, so it's not only the private consumer, but also the industries who will want to buy 6G equipment for their vertical industry, we need to make sure that they are secure by design, trustworthy by design, private by design. So if you're providing a private 6G network to a vertical industry, it needs to be absolutely private and dedicated to that industry. So a lot of this is being considered in 5G advanced, but it will need to become integrated fully in 6G. And industries which may pick up 6G are really sort of an evolution of 5G. We're already seeing 5G being deployed in factories, being deployed in connected vehicles, being deployed in connected ports and logistical freight areas. So we will expect that in 6G to expand even further. And once you have that network in place, we need to make sure that it's not attacked, that it is maintained, and that it's reliable so that the service needs can be met.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I have then a question for Ricardo. Actually, I would have many questions, but let me start by asking something about the initiatives of NTT Docomo in order to realize the end-to-end cloud continuum that he mentioned, and whether there is any relation to the ORAN development from 5G to 6G. Ricardo, can you have a say?
Yes, thanks. It's actually a very important question for Docomo. The virtualization and cloudification of the network appliances is the way to go to save energy and reduce the operational costs. So Docomo invested a lot already in the recent past on the virtualization and cloudification of the 4G network, and also now the 5G core network is fully virtualized and deployed in the private cloud of Docomo, with a very interesting result in terms of energy saving. So that's the way Docomo would like to extend also to the RAN components, RAN network functions. So Docomo established 1 year ago the OREC initiative, which is the Open RAN ecosystem with some vendors, leading vendors of radio equipments and virtualized RAN components. And so that's very important, let's say, fundamental direction that we would like to develop further. Because to make really sustainable and economically viable the next generation network and also the current generation network, we need to virtualize and cloudify and leverage on the possibility of splitting the evolution of the software from the evolution of the hardware. So when you have a new hardware available that is better performing and more energy saving, you can deploy it without revolutionizing your network. So that's the way Docomo is following to make more sustainable and economically viable the future networks. And for 6G, that must be considered as a design principle, as I said. So let's say that we are investigating some ideas that can make the next generation network even more better performing and more suitable for a deployment in the cloud.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one question for Dirk, which is also related to the question he got and the answer he provided via the chat, which deals with the hospital vertical, let's say. What are the requirements that such an important vertical would bring to 6G? What are the most important requirements from your viewpoint, that 6G should be able to fulfill?
Well, you might know that in the healthcare system, it's mostly about reliability and safety. I mean, those services which we provide to our patients and for the treatment of those must be safe, must be reliable, and must finally provide the means that are intended for the patients. As I mentioned, the dynamic environment that we have requires a continuous resetting of any action that we perform. And for this, we need this perfectly sensing and collaborative environment, not only given by the device itself, by a robot, for example, but also the entire environment. The clinic must be sensitive and must communicate with any technology which we implement to provide the necessary safety and reliability. And I believe that only 6G is able to provide this form of sensing. We also think of integrating multiple sensors in one fused modality, which also is a way how to approve the result of sensing and to provide information which we could really work on. So this is the demand we have in the healthcare system, and why I believe 6G is not only helpful, but it's a game changer. And this is also something we could use to convince the society why we work in this field, because of the pains we have and because of the requirements the solutions will bring with them.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Maziar, turning to the issue of sustainability and the carbon footprint of networks. Something which is related, what are the verticals that will have the highest impact, the verticals of 6G that will have the highest impact in terms of reducing the carbon footprint and since 6G will be AI native, as we are used to say, what do we expect that AI and machine learning techniques, which will be embedded into the network, will bring in terms of carbon footprint and in general sustainability of 6G?
Well, thank you very much, Roberto, for excellent question. I start with the second part that is relates to artificial intelligence. We're already seeing AI being used in 5G systems for smart management of resources, even on the sort of a MIMO and radio side, and that is helping, really, but for example, switching on and off some segments, and then predictive modeling to reduce the energy consumption. So that is, I think, this is excellent. This is only going to continue in 6G. What we will be seeing in 6G will be able more sort of a AI being native to 6G systems in different part of the RAN and also core, just as part of the design. Now that is fantastic, but the flip side is that as we know, AI is also quite like deep machine learning, deep learning. They are quite energy and data hungry, and its particular consumption of energy is so we need to find a balance here in terms of how much we are going to embed AI. At the same time, you're trying to reduce the energy consumption for the RAN. Now, I'm also in our AI institute, and we are looking at a more energy efficient way to do machine learning, deep learning, looking at things like spiking neural networks, analog computing, in order to also reduce the energy consumption of artificial intelligence. And I think this is really an important area for us at telecom sector. We also have to very closely look at. Just to come back to the second question, well, if you look at the numbers, the energy and transport those are the biggest producer of the CO2. So I think these are the really areas that we can make a big impact. But not to forget smart cities, which also include obviously part of automotive transport. So I think three areas, if I want to put my hand on, is energy itself. We see great interest from the energy sector in reconfigurable connectivity coming from 5G, for example, and of course, transport and smart cities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maziar. I was told by the organizers that Ying is back. She solved the connectivity issue. Is this the case? Are you there? Can you hear me? No, I guess not. So, okay, now let me move to the last part of the panel where we start checking on the chat, and we might have discussion on topics where I will ask the panelists to raise their hand and say a word regarding some topics. First of all, there is a question here from Jesus Alonso Zarate on the chat. Do you think that 6G will be essentially what 5G was supposed to be, but will not manage to deliver? I consider this a very interesting question. Actually, 5G was rather disruptive in its intentions with the famous triangle, EMBB, MMTC, or LLC, and the intention to be focused on verticals. But many verticals are very slow in accepting the role of 5G. So maybe at the end, this will be done only with 6G. So this question is for whoever is willing to provide an answer. Is there anyone willing to have a say? Yes, Ricardo, I see you want to.
So just shortly, I wouldn't say that 5G is not delivering what was expected to do. Let's say that we are just at the beginning of the deployment of the 5G networks, and so we have still to see what are the potentiality of this technology. And for instance, there are in the standard, there are some features like support of time-sensitive networking or ultra reliable low latency communication that are not yet deployed in the network or available even as a feature commercially by vendors. So I think we have still to see what's going to happen with 5G, and that we will see in the upcoming years. But to respond to the question, let's say that there are new requirements that arise there in the last 10 years. So when we talk of 5G, we talk about technology that was designed as an architecture in 3GPP. Several years ago, we started in 2016, I think. So in the meantime, there are new societal requirements, new services that are expected by the society, and also the sustainability targets that are very important that were not considered at the time. So let's say that there are new requirements, both functionally and also from the operational point of view, especially sustainability, that are new and that were not considered in designing 5G. So that's why we need a new generation network.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other viewpoint on this? Otherwise, we'll move to another question.
Yeah, if I could briefly comment. So it might well happen that it looks like that 6G will deliver what 5G promised, but it's not really fair to look at this from that point of view. So as Ricardo already pointed out correctly, so 5G was disruptive in a sense that we started to address vertical industries, and these huge amount of work that we had to spend in order to harmonize terminology, to gain mutual understanding of our innovation cycles, etc., was of course all done in the early 5G time. Yeah, so and 6G will dramatically benefit from what we achieved in this arena. So it's of course much easier for 6G to address verticals than it was for 5G. And so from that point of view, it's not really fair to compare it this way. From a business perspective, of course, it's a fair question, but I also believe that the things that the vertical industries are really waiting for in the 5G lifetime are still to be deployed, and the best of 5G is still to come from a vertical perspective. So it's by far too easy to say now that only 6G will deliver what 5G promised. So from my point of view, 5G will already deliver a lot, and in 5 years we will have discussions about where is the niche use case where 6G can really dramatically make the difference compared to what 5G in 5-6 years will be able to deliver. So I would always be careful to comment on this in a negative way too early.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your viewpoint. Any other panelists willing to say a word? Otherwise, I will move to a message I got. It was apparently directed only to me, but it's actually a question for David from Etsy. What does secure by design mean for a new technology for which the risks are yet unknown? So what does security by design mean?
Trick question. I've supported several Etsy security groups in the past, and we have certain experts who are always, including chairmen, so people of influence, always saying we must design technology and systems which are secure by design. I detect it's something that doesn't happen because obviously security is a cost and it doesn't automatically generate revenue. It generates value, but not revenue. So will people invest in a cost that doesn't give revenue is a question. But if it's it gives value, so value of people trusting the system, then that's clearly a selling point. Secure by design means before you implement a technology, you actually look at the security risks of that technology. So you don't deploy massively a technology to a public network, which is then considered critical, and then say, oh, we've discovered a security loop or a privacy loop or another loop. It really is to do the security risk analysis before. And if you find the technology is not secure by design, you don't deploy it to the public network, or you do it in a very closed area, in a very located area where the risks are well managed. So secure by design. You can also bring it down to ethical by design, sustainable by design. These are things which get considered at the end of the process. What many people in the industry are trying to do is bring it up to the front of the process. So consider the impact of the technology before it's deployed massively to the network.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one more question, which goes back to the topic, which is so relevant to me, of the, so to say, the acceptance by citizens that we already addressed. But I would like to focus in particular now on one of the emerging key enabling technologies that several of you mentioned, like Hans and even Maziar. Maziar in particular, I would like to have your view on this. Localization and joint localization and sensing, which everybody expects will be implemented in 6G, thanks to the very large bandwidths that will be available at higher and higher frequencies, and to the implementation of the new well-known technology, ICAS, or as you want to call it, integrated communication and sensing. I have the impression that this technology, once it will be implemented in 6G networks natively, might bring a further problem in terms of acceptance by citizens, because they will hear from the news that while base stations deployed on the ground will allow them to communicate, will be able to localize them very precisely, determine what they are doing, where they are going, and so on and so forth. ICAS to me is a wonderful, has a wonderful potential in terms of new applications, new services that 6G might bring to the citizens, but at the same time, there will be an even stronger problem in terms of acceptance for the reasons I mentioned. Maziar, in particular, since you mentioned this, I guess, do you have any view regarding this aspect?
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. That is actually extremely interesting, because just before COVID, we had a project to offer elderlies in homes assistance to communication networks, so detect falls and similar things. And what we found that in UK, at least, I think across Europe, they were much more sort of resistant to obviously video cameras being installed in homes or care homes. But at least from the perception point of view, they were more sort of open to systems at that time, maybe Wi-Fi localization, for example, that we were using, or we're using some other systems, and that gave a bit idea of sort of those more anonymity here rather than video. So if you're able to, and this is can be done, detect falls, for example, or in heartbeat, that sort of thing, using say 6G or Wi-Fi, instead of having these videos installed in homes, that actually helped improve the sort of acceptance. So that's what we have experienced. So it may work in a good way in this sort of scenarios. But coming back to what you mentioned, I think again with this technology, we do need to do early education, and also there need to be some regulations regarding this in terms of a data sharing, and that has to be communicated to public very, very early on in order to obviously answer these very legitimate questions you just posed.
Thank you very much, Maziar. Let me make one final statement, which is somehow a question for whoever is willing to reply. We have 6 minutes more, and then we have to close, which is still related to the issue of acceptance by citizens, but it's it has a different flavor. I think it was Ricardo who is in his slide has mentioned the three main verticals. So coming back to the issue of verticals, which was one of the topics of this panel, the three main vertical were mostly 6G will have an impact. Automotive, industrial automation, and he said something like multimedia applications. So from these three, I tend to agree on the fact that these are the three most important, maybe, or the ones that will drive most of the market for 6G. They have three different characteristics, however. Industry automation, it is something that the citizens, the individuals, the people from the street don't perceive as something that has a direct impact on their life. There is an indirect impact, of course, because the efficiency of the production processes can make life better for whoever, but it's a very indirect impact. Automotive applications, it's something in between, because as long as our cars will be equipped with a lot of sensing and communication capabilities, we will perceive that indirectly there is some clear advantage for us. But the third one, which I connect to the issue of the metaverse, multimedia applications and so on, they are directly for humans. So my last statement is maybe a clear focus on those applications which are more oriented at the individual, and I should also include the case of the e-health, course, which is here represented by Dirk, is maybe the verticals which will make more acceptable by the citizens the deployment of a new technology like 6G and the investments that will be related. So the question is somehow related to whether the verticals are for machines or for humans and the role of metaverse. Anyone willing to have a say? Ricardo, yes, please.
Yeah, shortly. So I mentioned those three, but it's not limited to, for instance, e-health, it will be very important. But what I expect is that e-health will get benefits from the other verticals. So for instance, if industry automation will adopt mobile access in 5G and 6G for their appliances, that can be also leveraged for appliances that are developed for the e-health. And the same for the multimedia, so immersive communication or let's say connectivity of personal devices like body network devices is something that can be exploited by e-health applications as well. So let's say that what I referred in my slides was that those that are actually directly involved in developing the products that are using the mobile network access. But there can be other verticals that are exploiting that kind of new technologies to realize their own services, like e-health. I didn't mention it, but I think it's very important.
Thank you very much. Any other views? Any other contribution to this?
No, maybe I can shortly confirm this. I mean, I think it's all about the application. If we provide applications which are beneficial and helpful for the community, for society, the acceptance will be high, and we must discuss openly about issues of being localized, of being observed and controlled. But if we link this to the advantage that the society will receive by this, I think we could achieve the acceptance of the community. So it's related to the application, and e-health is definitely a great chance to step into this discussion, because everybody understands that health and well-being is something which is attractive, and everybody's investing, is buying sensors, bio-trackers and so forth to improve their own health and their well-being. And if this is even more improved by 6G related technologies, I think the acceptance will be high, and we can open a good discussion with society.
Thank you very much. Any further review? We have 1 minute more. which I should use just to thank the panelists and conclude the panel. Actually, I tried to mix the concept of the discussion on the verticals with the one of the acceptance by citizens, because maybe it's the Italian view. This issue of the acceptance is very, very relevant. And it's also connected to the fact that at the end of the story, our daily work should go in the direction of making what the people wants, what is good for them. I personally believe that the metaverse, which despite any announcement will not come very early at its large and full potential, will be one of the key application areas for 6G, and hopefully e-health will also be, both of them being, as we said in this very last minutes, focusing directly on people with clear benefits on daily life of people. So maybe while 5G, everybody say, is moving from B2C to B2B, maybe 6G will somehow get back to B2C, and this would be for the benefit of the citizens again. So thank you very much. We started with 20 minutes of delay. I'm giving back the floor to the organizers with the same 20 minutes, 21 now, minutes of delay, which means that we stayed on time. So thank you very much to the panelists for the interesting discussion, and for those who make questions over the chat.